Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Closing Community Gaps. I am your host, Zachary Borden. And again, this is presented by the Cultural Connectors of Family Service Nova Scotia. Today, I have the privilege of being with Deborah Borden Reddick, who I call my Aunt Debbie. And today we're here to talk about the gaps that are within our community. I'll regurgitate it for you and for everyone at home. A gap is the space in between an individual and the solution that they are looking to receive for a problem that they're having. I won't take credit for this. This actually does come from a book. It's called Closing the Gap, a blueprint for transforming your life. It's written by Sean O'Shea. That book talks a lot about mental health, finding the services for people in terms of mental health, but also taking the first step for yourself and finding those services for yourself. So I took inspiration from that. And with this podcast, we want to take that into the cultural lens of things. So how could we find help for people that are feeling a little disconnected from their culture? How can we encourage them to take those first steps? What are the missing spaces, the missing programs, things like that? And I didn't say this in the first one, but I'll say it here. This is nothing that my organization or your people should really solve. This conversation is just to bring these things to light.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, Debbie, Aunt Debbie, how are you today?
I'm fine.
And instead of me trying to explain what you do, because I know what you do is so elaborate, for the people at home, what is it that you do and why do you do it?
What I do is I'm an officer of the Justice Center in Sydney, Nova Scotia, in the court system. That was the beginning of what I did. Now I'm in a different area. I do what is called retention, and that's storing and taking care of the old files and having a lot to do with the file room now. And that's where I'm going to end my career at, because I finish November 30th is my last work day, and December 31st I will be a retired justice officer.
Why do you do that job?
Well, actually, Zach, the reason I do that job is I ended up doing that job. I started with family services down at the provincial building in 1980. See, I'm not sure if it was 83 or 82 and around there. Mm-hmm. And I came on filling the gaps because I was, B was her name, Beatrice. She works with your dad sometimes from, I believe, I don't know if she's still there because she could be retired, but I'm not sure. They were needed to have diversity because they didn't have diversity. Mm-hmm. And I applied for a job underneath the program. And that's how I ended up where I'm at today, because I started there. I was a receptionist. I was working with the Workers Children's Aid Society. I left there. I did other things, and then I went back and I took a test and passed it, and for the old courthouse, and that's how my justice career began.
Okay.
And it was filling gaps once again, because my first job at the justice system was through being an African Nova Scotian.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like, as time goes on, especially in this community, that's how I found my job. I was in the government, mm-hmm. Just immigration. It had nothing to do with community services, but because of, who our family is in this community, Mary Jo, our executive director, reached out to me and said, I think you would be wonderful for this job. And I talked to Jalen about it, and he said, I don't need a social degree or anything like that, thankfully, but it's just something that is very ingrained in us, I find, coming from this community, who we are as the Bordens. We're always looking to give back to the community. Yeah. And I can definitely sense that. I mean, in you, in Dad, in my other aunts, yeah. In everyone that comes from our family.
And I think it has a lot to do with Chess Borden, yeah. Laura Borden. My father more so, because my father would give you a lesson, but it wouldn't be your average lesson. He would just say certain words. You would say, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? And he would just, look at you like, figure it out. Like, you're not stupid, so figure it out.
Yeah.
And sometimes some of the lessons that my dad taught me are applying now to my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Instead of earlier in my life, like now I understand, I fully understand what Chess was saying,
Yeah.
you know? And Dad had a lot of good, he was a good man in the sense that he understood that his children needed to be educated. My dad and my mom both had grade 10 and 11 and around there. And that was a feat in its own.
Yeah.
And even when I was a teen pregnancy, my dad said she won't be the first and she won't be the last, but she'll get her education and we'll make sure of that.
Yeah.
And you know what? They made sure of it because I got my education and I went on, you know?
Yeah.
And I think if my dad hadn't lived his own experience, which he's had some, I don't think I would be where I'm at today either.
Mm-hmm.
Because we all grow from certain aspects of our lives and the people involved in them.
For sure. I think the people are very important. Me and my father, if you've seen the other episode,
Yes, I
we
did.
were talking about how, Sarah Hayward was always on Dad when he was younger. He would be out in the community fooling around with his friends, and if he saw Sarah, he ran the other way because he knew that she would punish him just as much
Yes.
as our grandparents did.
And those were the days the village did raise us. Like,
Yes.
you got in trouble on that end of Lawyer Street. You got to get back up to your own end.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of people along the way up the road. So, yes, yeah.
So that kind of takes me into another question that I have for you then. What is it like for you when you were younger in this community?
Oh, Zach, when I was younger in this community, I absolutely loved it. I had no fear. I had no. I lived in a bubble,
Mm-hmm.
really. We went out, we played, we did whatever. We traveled in our outside of our community, like going up to the lake, which was a big deal. And no, but you didn't have any worries about not getting back home. You knew when that light went on at night. And my first husband, his mother, Yori Johnson,
Mm-hmm.
Yori Jones, some would know her as, she would holler out, Daryl. We all knew it's time to go home. you know so so once again the community was there. I would never have wanted to be or have lived any place else but Whitney Pier.
Mm-hmm. We were talking a little bit off camera about Miles, but he's my friend from Toronto, and he lives a completely different life in the city. And I was telling him that life down here is very different from any city. I
Yes.
lived in Halifax for about 2 years, and then even Truro for another 2. So I was gone away for about 4, maybe 5. And I ultimately came back because I couldn't deal with the separation
Yeah.
that was in Halifax in terms of community, in terms of maybe I just wasn't integrated enough,
Yeah.
but it felt like to me everyone was in competition. And down here it doesn't feel like that.
I find, well, I lived away for almost 17 years, Toronto and Mississauga. And to tell you the truth, one of the biggest lessons I learned in this city was there no Whitney Pier. In the bigger cities, there's all kinds of diversity, but they're all separated by streets too. Don't forget that. You live in this section, it's Jamaican. You live in this section, it's Spanish.
Yep.
You live in, Latino. I remember getting on the bus, going to my chiropractor, and this girl, she was speaking to me. She's speaking Spanish, and I was just staring at her like, you know. So she said, "You don't understand your own language?"
Mm.
And I said to her, my language is English. I said, and I'm not Spanish, I'm not Latino. She said, you got an accent. I said, I don't know about that. She said, and I said, I'm from Nova Scotia. Oh, I knew it. She said, I should have known. But it just shows you that, like in the bigger city, depending on where you lived at, dictated a lot of things too. And it wasn't like here in the Pier, like when we lived in the Pier, everybody lived everywhere. Did we have our problems? You're right. Yes, we did. But he didn't select a piece of the city because there was more black people there, or because there were, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in where I was in Toronto, I found that it had a lot to do with it was still a division of, they live here, we live there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like one side of the street, there was X amount of people that lived, they were all Italian. On this other side of the street, they were all Jamaican, Barbadians. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So they had limits. Like even though they have God, like I mean, they have how many diversities, right? But here in Whitney Pier, when I grew up, it, we were blended. It just. I'm not saying that we didn't have differences, because at one point in time you could only go up so many streets in the pier too.
Yeah, more towards Broadway, right?
So but Whitney Pier had such a home. It's an inner thing. It's a soul thing.
Yeah.
You felt like when we used to come home in the summer, or we come home on vacation. Oh, what a difference when we come over that causeway, right? You felt, and when I got to Whitney Pier, because my husband's not from Whitney Pier, my husband's from Lincolnville, Monastery area. When I got to Whitney Pier, it was home. I hated to go back. I don't even know why I put myself through that. I should stay away. But every year I'd come home, and it was so hard to go back.
Yeah.
It really was. But we were blessed because I had and you have, great family. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It wasn't outsiders. It was family. It was, even though we're the Bordens and Chester and Ollie doesn't, we're well known that way, but we're still family was always there. That was the glue.
Yeah.
That's your mom.
Yeah. No, definitely. I know. And I mean, I know back in the day, I mean, even still sometimes today, there is that separation of Sydney and Whitney Pier.
Yes.
What do you think about the separation? How do you think it affects the people that live in Whitney Pier?
Many moons ago, I was more distinct. Mm-hmm. I don't find it so distinct anymore. I don't find that we still have you still have that separation, but not like when I was coming up,
Yeah, maybe a little less open racism, a little less, that kind of thing.
That
I
kind
find
of
we've come very far in that area.
In that area, yes. Yeah. And you look at it now, like I'll tell you a little story about that. I was in my backyard cleaning my car. There was this girl and guy. He was looking for $1 donation. Anyways, Aunt Deb decides, okay, hey, I'm all, I never know where I'm going to end up myself someday. So anyway, she was talking about being, now I'm not really 1000% sure if she was born and raised in Pier, but she lived in the Pier. And so she was telling me, blah, blah, blah. And she was having such a hard time. They finally found a place, And I said, oh, yeah. And I said, that's nice. She said, yeah. But she said, the prices. She said, I said, are you telling me now? I said, you can't afford to live in the Pier? And I burst out laughing. And the reason I laughed is because for so many years, it was such a negative to live in the Pier. Yeah. Well, now go find a place to see if you can live in the Pier.
I can't. I'm telling you, we've been looking. I can't.
It's true, though. And so there's the switch. Yeah. And we now look around and like we see the changes in the Pier too. Like look at the diversity in the Pier. Mm-hmm. It is big time. Yeah. The Pier is no longer. It's still got that Whitney Pier thing, but when I look around, I don't see what I used to see. You know what I mean? Like even coming home, when I came home, and I moved to Matilda Street, right? Which is a nice little street, blah, blah, blah. But in the 12 years I've been there, I'll tell you, Zach, the changes in diversity are huge. Like it's no longer white man's land there. And it used to be, believe me, and now it's like, wow. And it's a younger crowd coming in. It's younger children coming in. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but it's a great street. and it still has that community base there. It's,
Definitely.
you
Yeah,
know,
no, I think the community spirit, as I understand it today, has definitely extended beyond Tupper's Lawyer Hanker.
yes.
When we go into the pier and when people think of the pier, you think all the way up towards Broadway,
Oh
Ottawa,
Lord, yes.
towards Borden Street and
Mm-hmm.
Mount Pleasant Street that's up
Yeah.
there. And I feel like we've all come together with the different, I mean, geez, how many different churches are there? There's Polish,
Ukrainian.
Ukrainian,
Yeah.
all these
African,
different spots,
Orthodox, you know, like,
right? And we've kind of come together. People use the term melting pot a lot.
yes.
I'm not sure how I personally feel about that
I
term
don't know about that term either.
because every culture is different,
Different.
right? And we come
We're,
together, but
we're
we're not
not
mixed
melting.
yet.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're coming together. Yes, we have, but we're not melting together.
No.
We've come together.
Yeah.
We still need to have our own distinct.
And we need to celebrate those
Yes.
differences.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was like a couple of weeks ago when they had up at the Ukrainian Hall their big festival for Pakistanians and Indians.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Did you? It was like, well, I got stuck in it.
Yeah.
And it was huge.
Oh my God,
But
that's
it was
awesome though.
But it was exactly, and they were all dressed in their attire and their saris and.
Yeah.
But I didn't know nothing about it.
And do you think that we should maybe, I know just in general, marketing and
Right.
hearing things around here is still very word of mouth. And we're not very good at it, I'll say that. It's kind of, you need to know someone going to that event to know about the event.
Exactly.
But do you think we should have more events like that? Do you think we should
Yes.
celebrate these different cultures?
Yes.
And even though it's not in that predominant area, we should hold those kinds of
Yes, I
events?
do.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe that there's only one way to grow and learn, and it can't be the same person we're talking to every day. And I find that there's a lot of diversity around that. They're interesting. Their culture is interesting. But so is ours to them. So if I trade off by giving you information about me, you trade off and give me information about you, I can learn from you, you can learn from me. And then I can take something from you, I can apply it to my own culture. Just not in a way that you would for your culture. And I think that's a growth thing.
Yeah.
And I don't see any other way of growing.
No, I think education and wisdom is one of the most important things.
So do I.
That we really have to focus on. It doesn't, like, I don't want to get too far into it. I don't know too much about critical race theory, but putting us in boxes is not doing any justice for anyone.
Yeah. Okay. So hence what you saying that's why, we have programs for people to reach out. We have at work, we have a lot of like the equity, inclusion, and diversity program. Do I believe in it totally? No, I don't. You know why I don't believe in it? Because it's a dream that somebody has in their head that all this is going to come together. And I don't think it is in some areas, because I honestly believe that when I go for a job interview, okay, screen me out or screen me in because of I'm African, I'm a woman, okay, blah, blah, blah. But don't screen me in because of all those things, and I don't have any experience.
Yeah.
My problem is, and I sit on interviews, why am I doing this interview when you don't have not a lick of skill to bring to the table? And this irritates me to death, you were a box they needed to check. And that's not right. It's not fair to me as a person coming in like that, and that's not fair to the organization. I believe the better way of doing that is, if I'm interested in coming into the justice system, I should be able, like we have students who come in, that's how you should start.
Yeah.
Come in as a student, learn from the ground up. Then when you do get more experience in your education and whatever you decide, and you say you want to come back to justice and you want to work a summer job or whatever, then you at least have experience. Not just because you're Black, not just because you're a woman, not just because you went to wherever, okay? Bring to the table intelligence, bring to the table some skills. Because I find a lot of times when we're checking boxes, we don't end up with the best.
Yeah.
We don't. And a lot of people don't want to hear that.
No, they don't.
You know? And that's unfortunate because I honestly believe that, yes, we've made many milestones. Do we have a lot more? Yeah, we have a lot more to go. But we have to do it not like in a fairyland that, oh, all these things are going to work together, because they're not.
Yep.
And if somebody really cares about doing what they need to do to get in a position that they want to go forward with, work at it. Mm-hmm. I just find that people are not working as hard, and too many people feel entitled.
And I think that leads me to a point that I wanted to make and discuss with you, that I discuss with all of the guests that I have on this podcast. You know, we've gone through some very challenging times. We've discussed a lot of gaps already within the community and within the justice system. All of these challenges are leading to things like a decreased mental wellness, more single parent family households, limited career opportunities. I mean, especially here in Sydney, we've talked about that a lot. Homelessness is just to name a few. And all of those scenarios definitely create a lot of helplessness in people.
Yeah.
For those people who might be experiencing a little helplessness, who might not have a mentor, what advice could you give to them?
I would tell people who are feeling that kind of way and they feel that there's nothing out there for them to actually look beyond, and you have to when you're in that situation, look beyond what you see every day, because every day you're seeing negativity, every single day. Because you're surviving. And most of these people are in survivor mode. Yeah. The homeless. You know, they're all they know is they need to eat. They need to sleep. They need a place. But I would say, because there's so many different programs now that are visible out there, regardless of if, you know, they're, say if they're staying at, associating with the alley center, or if they're on the streets and they're going back and forth, there's information given back and forth all the time for them. Mm-hmm. And it's not like the hand isn't being extended out to them either. They have to ask somebody, one of the workers who work down there, social services, they have to ask for help. A lot of people's problem is they don't receive the help because they don't ask for it. And I can't assume, Zach, because you got a hole in your pants that you're poor and you're homeless. I can't. I can't assume that because I see you every morning at 9 o'clock in the morning, I gotta give you a cup of coffee, that you're poor. Yeah. That's not true. Yep. Okay? I have lived in the big city where we used to have a lady that sat on the corner. Her son used to drop her off at the corner. Sad. They had a $500,000 townhouse. Son drove a black, I forget what kind of car it was too, the shaken lady. Yeah. And I can't make assumptions. No. You just can't, because you just don't know. Maybe I don't choose to spend my money on me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I might not look as like you dressed coming to work regardless, or wearing whatever that says, you know, hey, I got money. You know what I mean? You know, like, you can't make assumptions about people, and people got to realize that everybody's not judging them. Mm-hmm. And if you don't ask me for help, I don't know if I can help you, but if you don't ask, I don't know. Yeah. And I find a lot of times people fail to understand that everybody isn't out there to get them. Everybody isn't out there to judge them. Mm-hmm. You know? I mean, when I used to live in a big city, I'll tell you, Zach, I gave my lunch money every single day to this one man. Every single day. Because I felt bad. Yeah. And my husband said, nope, Deborah, you can't do that. You know, you don't live in Cape Breton. Like, you know, he needs to give you something, sell you something, like to make it. I said, so one day I'll go over to work and I tell him the same thing. I can't give you my money, even though I gave him my money that day. But it'll be the last day. And I said, my husband says you have to sell me something. 2 weeks, I didn't see him for 2 weeks. And I said, oh. I got used to seeing him, got used to talking to him. He was very interesting, very nice. Yeah. 2 weeks later he came and he said, It was a little. When you got on the buses in the big Toronto, they give you a paper. It's a community paper.
Okay.
It's free.
Yep.
And that's what he gave me. This sold it. I bought it. I bought it. So, I don't know whatever happened to her or whatever, but you just can't make. You just don't know.
Yeah, you may have taught him a lesson.
Maybe I have.
That he can take free things and resell them for a profit. That's a good business model.
Hey, there you go. But yeah, I think we all need to realize that there are people who seriously do need the help, but we can't just assume that they do either.
Yeah.
They've got to be able to reach out.
For sure.
And I believe now in this day and time and climax that we live in, there's lots of ways for people to reach out.
Yeah.
There are.
An endless amount.
Oh,
really?
There's a lady that was sitting across the bench there when I was sitting in the car. And, she was homeless, obviously. I could see that. Yeah. But could I go up to her and say, oh, you need blah, blah. No. She would have to come to me and say, I need a cup of coffee, or I need something to eat. Yeah. Or, you know what I mean? Because I can't make those assumptions. And there are people who do live on the streets, and that's the way they live. Yeah. They can't get them in shelters. They can't get them up, Yeah. But I believe most people just need to ask for help. And there are so many programs that weren't here before. Yeah. There's so many people that want to help too.
Of course. Yeah. I always say that it sometimes only takes one person.
And it does.
I like to reference the Biggie story, the rapper Biggie.
Yeah.
When he was on the street, he was selling drugs and he was involved in gang violence and all these things. And then one producer, Puff, one producer reached out to him and said, man, you got to cut all that other stuff out. He said, I can let you be a rapper. I can give you a chance at a better life and a better wealth. But you got to cut all that rest of the other things out. Yeah. And he listened to him. Yeah. For the most part.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the most part, until other things got involved. And then, life gets complicated, more money, more problems. But then that's a whole nother conversation that, we don't have to go into. Yeah. If you could change one aspect of Sydney in terms of our system, in terms maybe government, or maybe just how we operate, are we too slow, for example? What would that aspect be that you would change?
I think one of the things I would change is when people come into the Sydney area, we should have some kind of open door policy, maybe through family services, that when you're a newcomer, you come in and you meet with, maybe it's you, maybe it's another person, to explain how it is working around here, what you can do, what you can get out of it, how you can integrate yourself into it. Are you looking for work? Maybe they're not looking for work. Okay. Are you looking to make friends? Sometimes people need a friend. We should have some kind of way to integrate people when they come in here.
Totally.
But we don't. No. It's all hit or miss. Yeah. We should have big lights. Come here, sit down, talk. Let's see what we can do for you. Yeah. How can we help you? But also we need to know how you can help us. You can't just come in and take. Yeah. And I think a lot of times in Sydney, as far as I'm concerned, it's all, you look around and, people take, but they don't give. And you know what, Zach? You got to give back, because that makes you a better person, I find.
Yeah, definitely.
Seriously. It helps that person, but it helps you too. Yeah. And I think if we had more of that give and take, as opposed to, I'm more important than you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what I think.
I definitely think Nova Scotia as a whole. I mean, like I said, I was living in Halifax for a while. And at that time, I was trying to find a job right out of college. I was doing a lot of networking. And that is definitely the vibe that a lot of people were giving off. That, I would shake a guy's hand and he would look over me. He wouldn't look me in the eyes. And that, as a student coming up, really deterred me. Yeah. It really just threw me through a loop. And I was like, wow, these people, do they not know that one day they're going to leave their company and someone has to take it over? Do they just not care?
Yeah.
And so that give and take really wasn't there. It was a take. Oh, I'm going to be retired one day. everything else doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It's like, well, that isn't how we should look at our society.
No.
We all play a role. If you're the current leader and your role is to build this organization, then you need to build it with the people that are already there, or find people to help you build it. It's not going to be all about you.
Well, and that's exactly how it boils down to where I'm at with my retirement. I don't have anybody coming in, and I'm the only one that can run that job. And I'm not bragging, but I'm damn good at it, okay? So I don't have a next. We tried to get a next, and it's just hard. Like, you get somebody, but then they see, oh, I can move on here, and and that's fine and dandy. But I think even in our government with our workers, we should it should be mandated that you have to stay 2 years at the bottom of the level before you can move on. Because, well, really 2 to 5. It took me a long time to get to where I was at, but I believe that when people come in, we should have that base. So you should come into that file room, because you know what, Zach? Without the file room and all the information in that file room, that guy on the 5th floor, who is your justice, he can't make a decision.
No.
He can't answer a question because he doesn't have the answer. Because the answer's in those files.
When I was at immigration, we had a lot of people do the file inputting.
Yes.
So where I would pull all my information
Right.
to make a decision on something is the exact same process of what you just explained. If someone didn't go through and do the tedious job of just taking the information off of these paper documents and putting it into our system, which a lot of people think is an unskilled job, but without it, I wouldn't have all the information to make my decision.
No.
And I couldn't even have the conversation with the client, because if I had their passport and all this stuff in front of me, I'd be trying to flip through it and then I wouldn't even be able to have a conversation with them over the phone.
Exactly.
So these jobs that we think aren't important or are low skilled are really important. And I always say, I think I even put it in my book, that things are in this life because people cared enough to put them there.
Isn't that the truth?
The only way that we have things is that someone cared enough to make them.
And that's so true. It is. Even with the way in that file room I work in, because I have experience from being out on the front counter, being with prothonotary, being with family, being with provincial court, I know what to pull to make sure that it's in that file. Because if it's not, then you have an issue. And I mean, more so in the Justice Department, of course, because everybody's looking, right? They're waiting for you. And so without somebody having that care, they don't care about it, it's all mishmashed together. Then the guy upstairs can't make no decision because he really doesn't know. Like, so there's a reason why everything's done. And there's a reason why that person did it. Because they cared enough to understand a concept that if it's not done right, it's about everybody suffering, not just one person.
What types of gaps do you typically see at being a justice officer?
Training. Lack of training. Yes, there have been changes. There's been changes to make better training programs and courses available. But what I see is the biggest gap there is training, because most times they're thrown into it. And it is tough to do that in the center, in the Justice Center. You either, if you don't have years from back there to draw on and you're brand new, it's not easy. It isn't. We need to set up, and they've began to do that, but because of the lack of workers, because we're like everybody else, we're short staff, and you're expecting so much from your older staff, which is really, there's not very many of us left. I think maybe not even a handful of us left anymore.
Jeez.
You know?
And I was actually talking about that the lack of opportunities for leadership
Yeah.
and other things like that with my father off camera. But what we kind of came to, and he sent me a really good podcast. I'll actually give it a shout out for the video to
Okay.
Charity Village. If anyone wants to go there, I think it's charityvillage.ca.
Okay.
But basically, it is an organization that does reports on nonprofit. So it talks about the nonprofit sector, talks about funding, how people can find
Oh, I
funding.
got them.
Yeah,
They send me emails all the time.
yeah, I'm
Yes.
subscribed to their newsletter too.
Yeah.
I think it's a great,
Yeah.
it's a great
Yeah.
source of information.
Yeah.
But the podcast that Dad sent me that they
Right.
did, they were talking about the imposter syndrome that a lot of people face. A lot of my generation has this imposter syndrome. It's really popped up over the last couple of years.
Okay.
And it's basically the sense of that, you know, even though we have, let's say, 2 degrees, we don't feel educated.
Right.
And we don't feel like our knowledge and our wealth is valued. And I straight up said to Dad, I said, Dad, like, I think there's a lot of companies that do very well and that have good structures and good management. But I think that they don't give enough opportunities, and we were saying it earlier, to the people below them. Because without that opportunity, without shadowing someone in your position, I would have no idea how to do your job.
That's right.
And so when you leave, if you just put me in the seat, I'm of course going to have imposter syndrome, because no matter what you trained me in school or no matter what theory I know, I haven't put that theory into practice yet.
That's right.
And there needs to be more of those opportunities, I find, within the community, within our economy.
Yes. And if I believe too that, you know, when you say like, I'm a hands-on person. Yeah, I've studied and went to school and all that. But when I was being trained, in the days that you were being trained, it was hands-on.
Yeah.
And then my education and what I was being trained in, my hands-on, they all come together.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I find we don't have that.
Yeah.
And so because we don't have a lot of students that like come in and get trained as if they're going to be working in the near future with us, it's like, you know, they get trained, but they're not staying in that particular department or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's something lack of, you know, there's something missing there.
Yeah.
And I believe it is. You need to be educated, but you also have to have that hands-on visual training. You have to have somebody who has the skill, somebody who has the experience. And experience is, you get experience by putting in years.
Yeah.
Experience is not coming just because you went to school and got two diplomas or 2 degrees or 2, you know what I mean? And that is one of the biggest gaps I find. And that's all over.
Yeah, I think you nailed that right on the head.
Yeah.
I think we get a lot of theory and we talk about it.
Right.
But that's not experience.
No.
And no matter how trained you are in terms of the theory, in terms of, oh, I can recite whatever back to front, if you don't have any hands-on experience, you're not going to be able to do it.
Exactly.
And I actually had an experience like that working for the government. I only did 2 years community college to get a programming degree. And many people that go into the IT field, they would do computer science.
Right.
Which is 4 years, and then you can master in something,
Oh,
which is
okay.
another 2.
Okay.
And so that's 6 years of school that I learned in 2,
Right.
essentially.
Yeah.
I learned the basics. Like,
Right.
there's obviously much more. I wasn't the best programmer.
No.
But then when I got into the field, they asked me, hey, how can we do this? Like, how can I think it was and it was an Excel sheet that I wanted someone wanted a lot of automations to happen. And I went, well, let me play around with it and I'll get back to you. And then there was another student there who was doing the computer science degree. And we were able to come together very well because with her theory and my practical experience, we solved a lot of problems quick.
We had a woman I worked with. She's retired now. And I used to go get help from her. And she would always say, you know, Deborah, she said, you might have the middle. No, you might have the middle and the end, but you don't have the beginning. So it doesn't all come together until you have the beginning, the middle, and the end.
Yeah.
And with working with the justice system, you need to have the beginning, the middle, and the end. And a lot of what's coming in, well, they don't even get the end. Never mind the beginning and the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
because it's, this is how I look at it. The government should take a Deborah or a Jermaine, that was her name, and when we got ready to retire, when we're retiring, we should be able to sit at a table with the new coming in.
Yeah.
We should be able to say to them, okay, tell me what it is you know. Tell me your theories. Tell me what you learned in school. And I'm going to tell you what the real world is about and how it works in our department this way here. And why does it work this way? Well, then I could be able to tell you why. And then you can start like picking up things and bringing it together, and then you have your beginning, your middle, and your end. And we're missing that big time. And I mean, not just us, but I mean our workforce. Yeah.
And how long did you say you were in this position for again?
This one here was supposed to be a 6-month project. It's an 8-year.
But I asked that because sorry, go ahead.
Because well, I have what, 16 years, and then I have X amount of years that they don't count as years. Because remember, even not you, but years ago, we were casuals. Yes. We didn't get any pension for that. They could lay you off on a Friday, call you back on a Monday. They made sure you didn't get your 2 consecutive years in, because that would mean you'd have to be a full-time employee.
It was like that in immigration too.
Okay, so like for years I worked for the government and never got any of none.
I worked for 5 years. 3 of those years were on casual terms.
See?
So when I left and they gave me what I was paying into my pension, it was only like a couple $1,000s, even though I was there for 5 years paying into the pension. But it was only because for the last 2 was I full time.
There you go. Yes. Yeah. And I didn't. And my first few years, many years when I left, up until I left, I was casual. Then I came back, and then I finally, I did not get full time employment with the government until 2017 or 2017. No, 2015. Think about that. All those other years, I had 5 or 7 years that I bought back for pension. Bought back now, listen to what I'm saying, which cost me an arm, a leg, and a tongue. But then there was all the other years before that, nothing.
Yeah, and I definitely think, just to really nail it on the head, that's a huge gap.
Yeah.
That we
it is.
Need to change, we need to figure out.
Yeah.
So wrapping up here, in your opinion, how do you think people of this community can contribute to closing some of the gaps that we discussed about today?
I think people in our community are closing some of the gaps, but it's, like you said, it's a slow process. It just takes so long to get that end result that's going to be a plus. We need to be able to speed it up, not to the point that, it's just a numbers game, but to bring it to light a little bit faster. It just takes us so long. We start a program, we do these jumps and hoops and loops, and 10 years has gone by. We've got to find that media where we can take a program, make it count in 3 years, 4 years. You know what I mean?
Do well research for that, but then don't belabor it. Don't,
exactly.
People use the term paralysis by analysis a lot of the time.
Isn't that the term?
And we get stuck in that cycle of, we need to revise instead of just putting it out.
Exactly. We do so much of that like I said, by the time you turn around, it's 10 years of your life gone by. What happened there? I think we just need to understand that everything does not have to take 20 years to achieve something positive. And I think if we would lessen that revive, we got to bring it. No, let's add on and move on. Let's not keep going back all the way back. Let's keep adding pieces onto it. Okay, if that happened then, let's make it better here. We already know what happened then.
Definitely.
That's what I would say for Sydney, Nova Scotia.
cross communication is a big thing that comes up to mind when you say that. One organization, like, I don't want to say spilling the secrets, but like
No,
sharing their progress with
thank you.
another
Yes,
organization.
Asian. Yep.
Because then, you solve so many problems over the year that maybe that other organization is having,
Yep.
and now you just solved it for them, and they
They,
don't have to go through the same thing.
exactly. Exactly.
Can you share any initiatives, programs, events that are going on around the community that you think are helping to close these gaps?
The example I gave you where they had the big
Yes,
cultural
yeah, that's
um, with Pakistanians, I believe.
yep, I think so.
Um, they had, like I said, it was the Ukrainian hall there
Mm-hmm.
that they used, but they were outside. They used the back of it, and like it was, hey, there's cross right there, man. Like
Yeah,
there's a has nothing to do with the Ukrainian, but these people were all. Oh, it was beautiful though.
yeah,
I just wish that I had known sooner what was going on.
yeah, yeah. So I think sharing stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, Facebook is a big thing that I think a lot of us are connected to around here.
yeah,
So I like to share a lot of things on Facebook,
yeah,
but we should have some kind of central hub or
yes,
central communication
yes,
system where it's not just word of mouth.
yeah. And I think if we had a center which is um, easy for everybody, no matter what age, where,
Yeah.
because I find a lot of times though, with all this modern technology, it comes down to the older people in our
Yeah.
community who have the wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
have the experience, but they don't know. They're not on the
They're not as
internet.
online as we
Yeah,
are.
no, so we've got to have some kind of way to include them in that.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it meant having them coming to a meeting once a month to say, hey, what's going on? This is what's going on. This is not what's going on. Oh, I didn't know that. And learning from them,
Yeah.
because they can give you a great deal of input too. you know and I think that's one of our in our community, it's like you said, word of mouth, like, which is great, but
Very limited.
yeah,
Yeah.
because you're only going to have your friends. I'm only going to have my friends. It's not going to be expanded out, and sometimes you need to be all out.
All the way out there.
Yeah.
We've discussed a lot of challenges, a lot of gaps during this interview, which I think is very productive, but I like to end on a strong note. So, what are some strengths of this community that you think we should really lean into?
Our diversity, that is the strongest thing in our community. It's amazing what it's like to live in a community that has diversity as opposed to live in a community that is, I call it the old boys club.
Yeah.
And I think the strongest thing we have is the diversity, and it doesn't matter if it's black, white, indigenous now, Pakistani, it doesn't matter. Diversity, because what is the biggest killer in our same community? It's diversity sometimes. Oh, look at Zach. He thinks he's white. It's true.
Yeah.
His skin is light. Because I was light skinned, I was accepted for more things than somebody who was darker.
Yeah.
So I think like the diversity. It's the diversity. Like, we need to hold on to that. It's very important.
Yeah.
You know.
Totally agree.
You know.
I think you reminded me of a funny Donald Glover, who is an actor,
Yes.
musician, rapper. He has a funny line in one of his songs that says that he was too black for the white kids and too white for the black.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's so true.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, even if I really want to go down the road there, I say to myself, like, I have been blessed because of being a lighter black.
Yeah. I think the same way. I feel like having my mother and my father has shared a lot of perspectives that I don't think I would have if I was a single race family.
No, you wouldn't. And I think it opens in my mind, anyways, being from the type of family I am from. I've sat in interviews where I knew because I was black, I wasn't acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
But then in other interviews, she's light enough to be
Yeah.
acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a two-way street sometimes. Like,
Definitely.
yeah, sometimes you have to really like, okay, I get it. I get it. But then it's up to you. See, I believe it's up to you also that get in that position that you want, but don't lose who you are either.
Yeah.
And I find some people melt.
That's a good way to put it.
Some
That's a
people
great way to
melt.
put it.
Not Aunt Debbie.
If people were to want to find you or talk to you, where could they go? Do you direct anyone for work, or if they wanted a consultation or anything like that? Is there any shout out that you can give for your profession?
I would say to always go to the Nova Scotia .ca website,
Okay.
Supreme Court website. Like, there's a bunch of websites there. I would say just do your homework when it comes to. I don't know how people anymore find jobs, okay? But do your homework. If you want to be that admin, do the homework for that admin.
Okay.
And truly understand what it is you're getting into.
Yes.
Not just because it's got a pension, or not just because it's got a $25 tag on it per hour, or $40. You know what I mean? Just do your homework. Read, understand, and reach out to people if you feel that you don't truly understand what it is they're requiring from you, what they want from you. Ask people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are in many different types of jobs. Maybe you have a friend, maybe your mother or father has a friend in that position. Ask them questions. That's what I would do anyways. That's what I did do. I mean, I learned to do a lot of research.
It's a great piece of advice.
Yeah.
Like we talked about, I think wisdom,
Yeah.
knowledge in any sense is the best route.
Yeah, it is.
But then again, to just make the point, you get your knowledge and then you get in and start getting that practical experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've been taught. Any entrepreneurial venture or mentor advice that I've gotten is always that you get your plan, you see if it works. If it doesn't, you fail quickly and you revise then.
Yeah.
You never revise before the plan or during the plan.
That's true. That's true. And at the end of the rainbow, you know what? Life is funny because we all have to do what is best for us, but also remember you've got to include other people in that.
Definitely. So before we head out, do you have any questions for me?
No, I'm just impressed with your
Oh, thank you so much.
Techniques with interviews.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, I am. I was really impressed with when you did your dad's one. Very, very impressed. But I'm your aunt and I love you to death. So, Zach, hey, what can I say?
Thank you so much, Aunt Debbie,
You're
for being
welcome.
here and having this conversation
Thank you.
with me. It's so important to have these conversations and to put them out there. So I really appreciate you being here. And I know that you have so many other things to do today. So thanks again. And I'll just wrap up real quick.
Okay. Thank you, Zach.
This has been a podcast presented by the Cultural Connectors of Family Service. Again, my name is Zachary Borden. Take care, everyone.